Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. We are delighted to kick off yet another thought provoking session on connecting the dots. First and foremost, we extend our gratitude to our esteemed speakers for their participation in this panel discussion. Ms. Sonika Aaron, founder and CEO at Marching Sheep, Ms. Gauri Das, Head HR at India Factory, Ms. Pallavi Kar, Head of Human Capital, AVP HR at Provident Housing Limited, and Mr. Devan Pandya, CHRO at Proxtake. Unfortunately, Mr. Devan will not be able to attend the webinar due to health reasons. Hope he gets well soon. A warm welcome to all. Our esteemed panelists would be sharing their views on this insightful topic, diversity, equity, and inclusion. DEI are essential pillars for fostering strong, dynamic, and successful communities and organizations. By prioritizing DEI, organizations and communities build environments where talent flourishes, collaboration strengthens, and trust deepens. This not only leads to social and ethical progress, but also enhances overall performance, innovation, and resilience in an increasingly interconnected world. Embracing DEI is not just a moral imperative, it is a strategic advantage that paves the way for a more equitable and prosperous society. HRA welcomes you all to the session on connecting the dots. To know more about HRA and its events, I would request all our participants to visit the link and details posted in the chat window. I now take the privilege to introduce our moderator for this session, Ms. Pallavi Kar, Head of Human Capital, AVP HR at Provident Housing Limited. Our moderator for today's discussion is someone who truly embodies the essence of impactful HR leadership. With 18 years of experience across financial services, education, fashion and lifestyle, co-working industries, and real estate, Pallavi Kar has played a pivotal role in shaping people's strategies that drive business growth while fostering inclusive and high-performance workplaces. She is currently the head of HR at Provident Housing Limited, leading strategic initiative in talent acquisition, leadership development, and employee experience. A recognized industry leader, Pallavi has been honored with multiple HR Excellence Award and is a sought after speaker at leading business schools and industry forums, where she shares her insights on leadership, organizational culture, and future of work. Beyond her professional achievements, Pallavi is deeply passionate about creating workplaces where every individual feels valued and empowered. She believes that DEI is not just a policy, it's a mindset, a culture, and a commitment that needs to be lived every day. We couldn't have asked for a better moderator for today's discussion. Please join me in welcoming Pallavi Kar. Over to you, Pallavi.
Thank you so much for that amazing introduction, Faisal. Really, really appreciate it. And good afternoon, everyone. I'm really excited to be here today and moderating this very, very important conversation on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Uh, for me, DEI is not just about policies. It's about the culture. It's about embodying that leadership commitment. It's about everyday actions, right? So today we'll dive a little bit deeper into how organizations can move beyond these check boxes and truly embed, DEI into the DNA of the organization. And of course, we'll keep it engaging, insightful, and maybe even a little fun, right? So let's get started. But before we dive in, okay, I'm just going to do a quick reality check. Just raise your hand or drop a yes, no in the chat box if you feel that DEI is a priority in your particular organization. Okay, interesting. Okay, now I'm sure a lot of us are kind of contemplating in terms of is DEI a particular priority in our organization. But I'm going to ask you an even more interesting question. Okay, do you think that the leadership today in your organization walks that talk, where we are actually looking at DEI? And that is where the challenges start coming in, right? So this is exactly why we are here today. DEI is more than just a fancy statement. It's on a company website, or maybe just even organizing a training. It's about bringing in that systemic change. It's about leadership actually taking accountability and making workplaces truly inclusive and not just diverse, right? Studies show that the organizations who are in the top percentile in their, DEI planning or so on, actually outperform their other competitors by more than 25%. And this is not me who's saying this. This is as per a McKinsey report, which was published in 2023. Yet, and yet I'm sure each one of us have seen that DEI initiatives start out really strong. They get a lot of applause, they get a lot of accolades, and then they fizzle out, just like New Year's resolution. We are already 2 months into the new year, and so this is why this particular discussion is very, very critical today. We'll be talking a little bit about how to measure DEI, right? Just beyond driving hiring numbers, and especially women hiring numbers per se, how to actually measure real behavioral change. Is it happening, not happening? How to future-proof DEI against economic downturns. And because it is 2025 now, we'll also talk about how to ensure that AI does not become our next unconscious bias. So it's going to be a very, very interesting discussion. So let's quickly get started. I'm going to introduce the panelist of today's discussion to you. With me, I have Gauri Das. Gauri heads she's the head of HR. She's the SVP at India Factoring and Finance Solutions Private Limited. Gauri is an engineer turned HR professional with double masters in human resources and psychology. She's an ICF coach and she's a well-respected HR professional. She's been 2 times TEDx speaker, founder of Lee Iron and Circle Leaders, lifting leaders in Navi Mumbai Circle. That's basically a community which supports women. And she's an author, has won multiple rewards, including Economic Times Young HR Professional, HR 100 Under 40, Top 200 Global Voices in Leadership, Top 10 Global Women in HR. She's one of the most followed HR professionals on social media and LinkedIn Person of the Year. You can follow her on LinkedIn. The link for the same has been shared in the chat window. A big kudos to Gauri for the amazing, amazing accolades that she's won across. The next panelist that I have with me today is Sonika. Sonika Aron is the most respected and sought after facilitator and HR consultant in not just India, but globally today. Seen as a thought leader and a trusted advisor, her opinions and work are frequently published in leading publications like Times of India, Hindustan Times, Hindu, Life, Mint, Statement, Pioneer, Business World, etc. An alumnus of XLRI Jamshedpur, a certified coach, she has a very unique style of facilitation wherein she engages with her audience and draws out deep reflections and participation. She has over 25 years of experience across different leadership roles in different companies like Philips, AkzoNobel, Roche Diagnostics, Vodafone, Pepsi. She started Marching Sheep in 2013 with the purpose of making a difference to people's lives and careers. In the last 11 years, Marching Sheep has grown exponentially under her leadership, today delivering to nearly 400 clients across 50 plus countries. She has made an impact on more than 10,000 women through her interventions on career intentionality under their flagship program, She Marches. She has engaged with several organizations and has helped build a long-term capability, diversity, and leadership strategy. She has helped client organizations systemically achieve desirable behavioral outcomes by streamlining relevant people management processes and delivering bespoke training programs. As a thought leader, she's invited to speak frequently at forums like FICCI, PhD Chambers, ASSOCHAM. She's invited as a speaker on TV channels like Mirror Now, Z News, CNBC Awards, NDTV 24/7, and she has been recognized by several platforms on her groundwork and impact on community by Forbes, Fortune, Business World, Outlook, UN Women, and the US Embassy. On a personal front, she has 2 kids, 1 dog, 2 cats, and 1 husband. So That's Sonika for you. You can follow her on LinkedIn. The link for the same has been shared in the chat window. So Sonika and Gauri, do you have anything to share before we start off this discussion?
Just that I'm super excited. I think this is going to be a very interesting conversation.
I am sure. I'm sure.
Yeah, likewise, and like you said, Pallavi, we are not going to let it be just like a token. We are going to actually talk. And I have heard Sonika before. I'm sure her strong views are going to be reflecting very positively today.
Absolutely, absolutely. Looking forward. And on that note, I just wanted to also share this. Like, every time people talk about DEI, and if for every time people talk about DEI and they talk only and only about diversity, like for every time people talk about DEI and diversity, like if I had a dollar or a rupee, by now I think I would have been a crorepati or something. People just confuse diversity with inclusion, whereas all of them are different concepts. So this is what we'll be talking about. Without any further ado, let me quickly jump into the discussion, and we'll hear our experts speak on that. My first question goes on to Sonika. Sonika, organizations have DEI initiatives, right? Like every organization thinks that they want to start a DEI initiative and they want to be in that space. But how can actually organization measure the long-term impact of DEI beyond traditional metrics like hiring and just retention rates? What are your thoughts?
Awesome. So, Pallavi, there is a shift that I have seen in more recent times, and I am basing this answer more on the kind of work we've been doing in the past, let's say, 12 months. Okay. So, first and foremost, I think the narrative of what does diversity mean, I think that is broadening a little bit. So, from just focusing on women to focusing on other dimensions, realizing that diversity also means people with disabilities, LGBTQ community, and and when we talk internationally, it also means ethnic diversity, racial diversity, today multi-generational diversity. All of this is coming, and the intersectionality. Now, when it comes to tracking how well are we doing in this space, pure numbers cannot give you a full story, because you are not just tracking how many women we have. Many times people from the community have not disclosed, and we cannot force them to disclose. So now we have to look at what is called as leading indicators. What are we doing to create an environment where everybody feels a sense of belonging, where everybody feels psychologically safe, where everybody can be their authentic self? So now when we work with clients and work on their DEI strategy, the question to ask is, what is a lagging indicator and what is a leading indicator? Lagging indicators can be your numbers. It can be how many people have we hired, how many people have we retained, how many people were covered in training. These are numbers. Now, how many teams, for example, how many processes have we streamlined from an inclusive lens? Today, when I am doing recruitment, do I have job descriptions which are neutral in nature? When I am screening resumes, do I have the capability in the organization where I am not um, sifting out resumes on the basis of gender, or because somebody might be from another region? Regional diversity also plays a role. So that is the kind of initiatives that some organizations are building in. The second piece that I see is how much of, and this is more at a country level, and a lot of MNCs have been doing this. There is something known as URPs, underrepresented persons. Now, if in a country there is a certain demographic, so for example, they say there are 4% people with disabilities in India, whereas globally there are 15%. I don't know how the math works that India should have only 4%. But from that perspective, you say that, my customer and consumer comes from the society. Are my products and services meeting the needs of that customer? Let's talk about banking. Let's talk about anybody who's giving loans. Do we even understand when people from the LGBTQ community come into the bank, into a branch, or people from PWD come into a branch? Do the people servicing understand this community? How do we talk to them? How do we address them? How do we show empathy? Now, from that perspective, that concept of URP and sensitization is another leading indicator. So there are various ways in which the organization more are saying that, okay, let's do one thing, but do it well. Let us have that one indicator, because if I drive that one indicator, it is going to have a long-term impact. Let me get confidence in these 1 or 2 or 3 low-hanging fruits, because I don't have bandwidth to chew more than that. I don't have budgets to chew more than that. So let me look at these 2 or 3. Let me get this done this year one, and then we look at what to do in year two. I hope I made sense.
Absolutely, absolutely, Sonika. And I think it's a very critical aspect that you brought in, where organizations are now starting to think beyond, just hiring numbers. And I think that's a very interesting shift which is happening, right? But in order to ensure that we permeate that change down across to all levels, it's very critical to also ensure that it's driven from a top down, right? Ultimately, while of course culture is everybody's business, and I'm a strong believer of that. Having said that, ultimately the leaders are not aligned, or they don't think on those lines. I think that's where a lot of organizations kind of miss that game, right? So my next question will be to Gauri. Gauri, while of course Sonika did highlight about how organizations are kind of contemplating to move across the change, how would you recommend, like, what can organizations do to ensure that leaders at all levels are truly committed to DEI beyond just a lip service? And that's when true change occurs. Gauri, over to you.
Yeah, very pertinent point, Sonika. And rightly said, Pallavi, it should not be a lip service. We have to live it. And that's where, whenever there is a small change, people will say, oh, now we are listening to certain things from US, and people are regularly asking in all forums, तो तुम्हारे DEI का क्या होगा? So why these questions? Because people think DEI is just a token. This is something which was being driven by US, and now that US is pushing back or taking things back, it is not going to work anymore. So if we have that thought process, because there was a board mandate, we were doing it, we will not be doing it. So, if in order to have this, we have to actually, I would say, education is one of the things that we have been doing, and India has actually reached a certain level, at least in urban areas. We are seeing, but yes, again, if we look at the movie, the recent Netflix movie that MRS misses, and we realize that no, things have not changed even in urban areas, right? So if this is the case, then it is always going to be a token. But if we live by it, if we make it a value, like you rightly said, it's diversity and inclusion are two different things. But sometimes I have seen cases where if you ask someone what is diversity, they will say it's inclusion, and if you ask what is inclusion, they will say it's diversity. So first, understanding education, and it has to come from top. No two thoughts about it. Unless the leadership lives by it, it is not going to work out. So when these questions started coming, I was like, why anything would change for us? It's not that we are doing it because of some pressure. We are doing it because we want to do it. So this want and needing to do, that is the difference, which will make a change. So yes, the same push from top, same metrics, like Sonika mentioned about metrics. You need to not only look at things, regular things, but she also mentioned that even your JD is talking about the inclusion or not, right? So if these small things are taken care of, then it will no longer remain a tokenism, but it will always be living. We will be living by it, and leaders would be taking that always taking it forward.
Thank you so much for sharing those thoughts across, Gauri. I absolutely agree with you there. I think it has to go beyond this mere tokenism, where people feel that, I'm here only because to fulfill a DEI agenda. In fact, while I was going through this and I was thinking about that I need to be a part of this session, I went ahead and I did some research and I found this beautiful study by Harvard Business Review, which says that 75% of underrepresented employees, right, like the DEI, the token employees, experience loneliness. Okay, being the only kind, one of their kind in their team. This leads to serious isolation, disengagement, and higher attrition. Like lot of organizations have different ways of looking at it. I mean, when I was going through this, I found that Salesforce tackled this problem by creating sponsorship programs instead of just mentorship, actively advocating for underrepresented employees to get promotion, right? So on that note, my next question will be to Sonika. Sonika, how do you think in organizations shift from surface level DEI efforts to ensuring real behavioral change? Because that's something which is still missing.
Yeah, that's my favorite question. So, whenever we try and speak to a client and we say that, listen, let's try and make an impact on ground, even if we change one behavior, let's do it for everyone. I always tell them that an employee experiences an organization not through HR, not through senior leadership, but through their manager. What is the kind of environment your first line team leader, supervisor, manager is creating in the environment? And that is what the peers and the employee will experience. So I always say that in any organization, the true protagonists of an inclusion journey are the managers, the people managers. Are we equipping the people managers to build psychologically safe teams where everyone, irrespective of whatever difference they bring to the table, whether it is age, whether it is gender, whether it is sexual orientation, whether it is neurodiversity, whether it is my language difference, whether I'm a Jain who doesn't eat non-veg, whether I'm a teetotaler, right? In sales team, I'm a teetotaler, right? So whatever it is, right? But my manager creates an environment where everybody is welcomed because of the contribution and what they bring to the table. Now, building this capability is what will drive behavior on ground, and this needs to be run across all levels of managers to the top. Now, what we expect from leaders at the top is to role model these behaviors, to enable managers to be able to drive these behaviors, because many times we hear from managers at middle and junior level is, I want to do it, but I don't have the authority to change a policy. I don't have the authority to do XYZ. So are we creating an enabling environment where people can speak up? They need to be more on the ground. While I agree that top leadership needs to be more strategic, but are they in touch with what is happening in terms of on ground experience of people? So as a role model, as an inspirer, as an enabler, that is what leaders need to do. And most importantly, across all of this, the HR capability needs to change. See, we as HR people are great when it comes to HR operations. And when, as an HR business partner, I need to have a difficult conversation with a line manager who is refusing to hire a diverse candidate because of some stereotype or bias, am I able to push back logically? Am I able to convince the line manager to hire on merit? Or am I just saying, or for that matter, even when I get a promotion recommendation, I immediately start making a case saying, okay, now my manager has said these two people need to be promoted, so now let me make a business case for this. But do I even ask the manager saying, okay, you have a team of 10 people, what about the other 8? What is the growth path for them? What is the learning journey for them? I think this capability and capacity in HR also needs to be built to have those difficult conversations with line managers. A lot of our HR operations people, HR BPs, have been in their branches or in their plants for 15 years, 20 years, and they have been reporting to plant managers and zonal managers. And because of this, there is a systemic barrier for them to be able to speak up. And I think that needs to be addressed. So these are my 2 bits.
That's very beautifully portrayed across, and I'm thankful that you brought about these concepts, because I have been thinking about it, and this is something which has been going on in my mind also as a HR professional for a very long time, in terms of HR being equipped to handle certain things, in terms of people being equipped, like the line manager saying that, you know what, I want to do this, but do I really have the authority to do it, right? Or maybe the HR saying that, okay, I just got a request and I have to hire somebody who's of a different gender, is also a very difficult conversation sometimes to have, right? So, in between all of this, and my next question will be to Gauri. Gauri, how do you think organizations need to start shifting the conversations from treating everyone the same to providing the right support? It's not about equality, it's about equity, and especially with those neurodiverse employees, with different cognitive styles. What would be your recommendation?
Yeah, thanks for bringing this, because whenever we talk about diversity and inclusion, it starts and ends at gender. So we always forget all other diversity, and that's good that we are talking about neurodiverse people. So yes, and I gained some exposure in this in CSR as well. We worked with CPI, which is Cerebral Palsy Institute. We also worked with Team Lee's Foundation, wherein we trained our skilled people to get employable skills. And with these exposures, I got a lot of insight about how we need to behave differently and work differently. But that's not going to happen at managers level. So you hire a neurodiverse person in your team, and you do not cut down on targets, then it is not going to help. Because when you are having a diverse person, you need to understand how they understand first. Because I have seen it during the meetings that people who are neurodiverse, they are also put up in the same environment, say it's a virtual meeting, and then they find it very very difficult to comprehend what is going on, what are they required to do. So we need to first understand them. So that is point number one, that we don't have to think everybody is thinking equally or has equal capability. We need to first have that empathy about them. The second thing would be, like I said, if you have them, then you have to cut down on expectations as well. As long as they are understanding the system, don't make it equitable, make it equity, because you need to give a push to them, you need to give them that support which is required. The third thing again would be language, which is very very basic but goes a very long way. Because if you are working with someone, so someday you feel frustrated, एक दो चार नहीं 5 बार बताना पड़ता है, and you say, are you dumb? The moment you say this, it's all gone. Whatever efforts you have put in till now, it's all gone. So be very careful about your language, and that's where emotional balancing would be very important for the manager, for the team in charge. And then definitely the common theme, that leadership push should be there. Are we actually, when we are doing town halls, are we actually considering the fact that we have diverse people? Because many times it happens, like it happened with me also. Now that I started speaking in Hindi, I don't know what kind of audience we have here. Do they really understand Hindi or not? So even during the town halls, what messaging we are giving, whether we are telling them no, we will go by whatever we know or we do, we are not considering you, then it's not going to be the right message. So I think these 4 5 things, but the most critical one would be to understand it, and be, I mean, even HR needs to have that understanding, that is your team ready for it? Pushing some initiative is not going to give you results unless you get the support back from everyone. So first and foremost, prepare yourself before you launch any such initiative. Before you have, you need to be ready to welcome them. They should not feel unwelcome. They just came, and I've seen some cases where people cry because of different kind of diversity, not neurodiversity. But yes, there have been instances. So prepare yourself well, educate yourself, have that emotional balance, cut down the expectations, create environment for them, and then definitely. But yes, we cannot say everything will be on merit here. Like you rightly said, it has to be equity. We have to give them the right push.
I think that's very beautifully portrayed across, Gauri. In fact, my next question, and while you were talking about it, I was contemplating. I'm sure this is a question on a lot of people's minds. You spoke about different regional nuances, right? Like, if I speak in Hindi, does everybody understand? If I speak in English, also does everyone understand? Maybe. So, but that's one part of it. That's one part of being working in an organization which is India based. But of course, there are organizations which have global organizations. So, what are some of the challenges that you foresee, in implementing DEI policies in global organizations where there could be different sensitivity to different cultural nuances per se?
A very pertinent question in today's global environment, and you can make it extremely challenging or you can make it very, very easy by changing your strategy. So if you make it local, so you have a guideline that yes, we are working on diversity, we identify these kind of diversity, this is what we want to do, but then you leave rest of the things for the organization. And I have seen, I've worked with European, American and Australian cultures, and I've seen and Southeast Asian as well, and I've seen there is a lot of difference between understanding. At some places we would be at very nascent stage where we don't even understand how many types of diversity exist. Or likewise, if you are working on a particular policy, say in terms of dress code also, so you cannot have a policy which will work in Europe. You say everything is okay and you cannot wear, which is something which is discriminating. We have had some cases in India also where there were questions on a dress code that a particular religion follows. So we have to leave it to them. So first thing would be have a global guideline that yes, this is what we want to achieve, but next level, connect with them. The third thing would be bring everybody together, not only the centralized team and the local team, but say for example, if you are working in 5 different continents, bring people from 5 different continents together, a DEI initiative at least, so that people start understanding that okay, these kind of differences may exist, and there can be a line in the global policy which may not be acceptable to you, and why it is not possible. Say for example, the very simple which everybody will understand in terms of compensation and benefit, right? We have a very complex structure. So we have a HRA and we have a LTA, and you can save taxes on that. Other countries do not follow such a system, and then they find it very difficult. Why do you want to have so many headers? So it took me years to explain this, right? Likewise, we have nuances in our culture. Say for example, one thing that people globally find very, very I would say odd or interesting is that we are vegetarian on Monday, Tuesday, but we can eat non-veg on Wednesday. So such kind of things, or somebody saying that okay, I am an Indian and I am fasting. This happened with me, and I had two more colleagues, and they said. I said I'm Hindu. I fast for this because I did not want to go in detail of it. And there were two more colleagues who were not fasting, and they said you are not Hindu. So these kind of nuances will not be able to understand unless they connect with. So bring everybody together would be the third thing that I would suggest from the experience that I have had. And fourth thing is let them go at their own pace. You cannot say next year in India every organization would be 50% diverse people, or this would be our ratio for neurodiverse people. It's very, very difficult. Like Sonika already mentioned, it's just 4%. And I was also amused when I heard this. How can it be just 4%? For other genders we say it's around 17%, 16, 17%, but for uh, special ability we say it is just 4%. So allow them to have their own targets. You cannot compare a Europe or a India or a Middle East together. So yeah, this is how we have to do. But yes, first thing and foremost thing would be that be human and understand there is diversity. Forget about inclusion at the moment.
Yeah, so I think Sonika has a point. Sonika.
Yeah, I think Gauri has brought out some beautiful points. I just wanted to bring out a couple of things. So, when we work with the same company present in different geographies, what we've realized is that um, understanding their local statutes is very important. So, to give you an example, we have the RPWD Act in India, which clearly calls out 21 disabilities. But if we go to, let's say, ADA or the UK Equality Act or the Act in Japan, in Brazil, they all have very different statutes. So even if we have an overall agenda that we want to drive inclusion of people with disabilities, there would be certain nuances from a statutory level that we would have to build into the implementation or the execution. That is number one. The second thing is that from a cultural lens, and this is where I think a lot of companies are working towards racial and ethnic inclusion, where they find that because of unable to understand, which Gauri brought out right now, the inability to understand each other's culture and how that culture impacts our communication style, our risk taking ability, our comfort with ambiguity, our comfort with the elasticity of time. These little things become a roadblock in collaboration, in being able to work as a team. Now, many times what happens is that there would be a regional head, let's say, sitting out of Singapore, let's say a regional legal head sitting out of Singapore, and that person's entire team would be located in different time zones. They find it difficult to work as a team because they are not able to connect with each other culturally. And it is not just about getting along as a team on religion or food or habits. It is deeper on way of working, way of learning, communication. What might be polite for someone might be brusque and rude for somebody else. What might be too direct for someone might be too convolvulated for somebody else. Now these little things need to be put on the table, and as a team we need to work on what is the way of working for the team. This today is not happening in a very structured manner in a lot of organizations. Even though there is transfer of talent from one country to the other, what happens is that the person who moves from country A to country B will be told about the country that person has moved to. But what about the five other people who are supposed to welcome that person's family? The integration needs to happen not just at the work front, but also at the social front. So all of these little nuances are still um, not completely thought through, even though we are becoming a global village.
I think those are some very pertinent points that you brought about, especially, with different sets of people and different countries, the different cultural mindsets which come across, what can be considered as brusque somewhere can be considered as time efficient in another space of the world. So I absolutely agree with you there, right? But again, coming back to the main agenda being, what are some of the best ways where we can assess, and my question is back to you, Sonika. Like, what are some of the best ways that you can assess whether employees genuinely feel included and valued or not? Like, one part of it is training people, one part of it is setting up structures, policies, everything in place. But, like, what are some of the tangible ways that colleagues can advocate for underrepresented people in meetings? What would you recommend?
Hmm. So I think this is a very good question, and I think there are different ways in which a company can assess. There is something known as as an inclusion maturity matrix. Now, within the same organization, Pallavi, we might have organization at different levels of maturity, from compliance to, let's say, integration in the business processes. But within the same organization, you might have different functions and different locations at different level of acceptance. Now, what most organizations do, or organizations that are assessing this, they do not look at it like one whole organization. They will put it in parts. They would assess it in parts. And the process of this diagnostic is multi-layered. There would be some kind of an employee survey, a cultural survey, followed by an FGD, followed by a policy audit from a lens of universal design. And then there would be triangulation of data, which tells us, are we meeting the needs of the demographics that exist in the organization? What is it that employees are saying? What is the level of belonging that people are demonstrating? And that gets linked to how are we achieving the business results. So it is not, diversity and inclusion does not exist in isolation. It is not an HR agenda. It is not a feel good agenda. It needs to speak to, are we able to drive the kind of productivity, the kind of outcomes, the kind of innovation that we are looking at? So when we look at it very holistically in a diagnosis, that is when we get to see whether we are moving year on year on these parameters. And when an organization is doing it consistently, do it year one. When you've decided on a DEI charter, you assess yourself as on ground zero, the baseline. Then you do a few initiatives or interventions, and then you assess yourself again after year one and see if you are seeing a movement. It can be 2 percentage points, 3 percentage points. It's fine. You are not in a race, you are just in a race with yourself. Then another 1 year. And I have seen organizations, because a lot of our clients have been with us for 6 years, 7 years, and the goalpost keeps on shifting. But what I have seen is that where the pace of change in the first few years is slow, the inclusion index will move slowly, 2 points, 3 points. But as we gain confidence on what is working, what is not working, how are people responding, people also build trust. When they see consistent effort, when they see an organization walking the talk and not just talking the talk, then the pace of change in the inclusion index also changes. So then we start seeing quantum jumps. And that is where the tire hits the road. I hope I'm making sense.
You absolutely are. And yeah, I think those are some of very, very pertinent but very brilliant points that you brought across, Sonika. Since we are running a little short of time, I have one final question. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to combine two questions and I'm going to put it to both the panelists to share their thoughts, of course. So what I want to understand, and I'm sure a lot of people in the audience are also going through the same mindset, with AI coming into picture, and the ways of working are now changing. What are some of the things that you feel like, how are Gen Z and millennial employees reshaping the DEI agenda, and how do you think companies should adopt? And more importantly, how can actually companies prevent DEI from getting deprioritized when financial crisis emerges? So the question is open to both of you ladies.
Gauri, go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so definitely this generation is changing a lot of things. And if I go back and think how transgender was described to me and what kind of feeling it invoked in me, in comparison to what 10 years old also knows about different genders or different kind of diversity, or they can say this is not inclusion. Sometimes I say something and my teenager comes back and says, you are not being inclusive, this thing is not right, you mentioned this is not right. So yes, if they are doing it at home, they are doing it at workplace also. And that's where all the tussle, right? When we have four generations at work, one is so open in thought, the another one is struggling with it, and the fourth one, the highest generation that we have currently at workplace, they are in a different tangent. So we have that tussle. But yes, I think because of them, we are opening up to things not only at work but at home also, because lot of learning on DEI that I got it at home before I implemented it at workplace. So no two thoughts about it. Definitely they are changing. Because of them, we are bringing in different policies. Say for example, a partner was not a recognized word for a insurance policy, but now it is there. Likewise, surrogacy, likewise, so many other things that are happening because of, I would say, AI also. And because of this generation technology, things are moving very fast. We have ways to measure, like Sonika mentioned that we need to have feedback. Now feedback used to take 1.5 months, I remember. Now feedback can happen in 15-20 minutes of time, and you can do it every month, every week, every day. Which meeting was not good, you can find out. So technology is also definitely changing. I'm sorry, I missed the second part of it. Pallavi, can you please repeat?
Yeah, no problem. So, Gauri, what I wanted to ask, and which is a question I'm sure is on everyone's mind, is what do organizations do when priorities change and financial crisis emerges and DEI
Ah.
gets deprioritized?
Yeah, so DI will get deprioritized if there is a priority to it. If we make it a business usual, say for example, if there is a crisis, we do not reduce the level of customer service, then why should we go for it? So if we make it just a priority, just an agenda item to be presented, then yes, it will change. Otherwise, I don't think it will need a lot of money to do DEI, because DEI is all about accepting, embracing differences. So money should not be a matter. Definitely, for example, you would not be able to hire more people, but can you focus on retention at that point of time more? We anyway look at number of people exiting or promoting in a particular year from DEI perspective. But at that point of time, can we have more focus on this? You may have decided to bring in a star speaker for the show. You may not be able to do that, but can you pick up someone who is working on this, and within the organization, can you have a chat about it? Talking about any other investment, instead of that, can you rely fully on ERGs? Other things, I think, as long as we have the mindset and we have the intent to do, it would not get prioritized. So don't make it a priority, make it a business usual thing, and there will not be any looking back on the DEI.
Absolutely. I think I like the concept of business as usual. At the moment, it's no longer about being a special initiative per se, but rather like this is just business as usual. And so much talent we miss out per se. I think that's a very great point. Thanks for sharing that. Sonika, your thoughts.
So, being mindful of time, I'll quickly share the impact of Gen Z and Gen Y on the workplace. I think wellness as a portfolio is becoming extremely important, and the straight-jacketed way in which there would be a policy and everybody would have to adhere to it, and there were, very one size fits all kind of policies on wellness no longer work, because people are in different stages of life, not defined by age. So there has to be a basket of offerings as well, as far as wellness is concerned, and that is going to be a very important space. The second space is how career pathing and learning journeys are going to be mapped out. I think today's generation is all right if there is no vertical growth, or they are not hung up on vertical growth and designations. Today they are looking more on at career lattices, where they are getting different exposure, they are learning differently, and they're enjoying themselves. So that is the second space which I think organizations will have to look at. The third is the focus on ESG and responsible way of doing business. I think today's youngsters are extremely focused on organizations that are doing business responsibly. So that is the three ways that I have seen this generation impact organizations, apart from everything that Gauri said. Um, on I think you cannot deprioritize humanity. I think we need to remember that behind productivity and profitability are people. You might have the best technology, you might have the best tool, the best machinery, the best service, but who goes and sells them? Who goes and markets them? Who goes and runs a process? Who is behind the analytics? It is people. And at Marching Sheep, we say diversity is a fact, even if we don't label it by gender or sexuality or PWD or generation. Diversity is a fact. We cannot um, think that we can work with not focusing on how to address the needs of a workforce which is increasingly becoming more vocal, more demanding, more woke in terms of what they can ask for. And today's workforce is also not afraid of taking sabbaticals and career breaks. So I think DEI is not getting deprioritized. You can call it anything else. You can call it employee engagement, you can dovetail it any other function, but it is not going anywhere. I'm very confident of that. That's it.
I think that's beautifully put. Where you say that it eventually, I think the next generation, and that's a very pertinent thing that both of you brought up about in your conversation. How the next generation is looking at it. If you look at the Gen Z, which is now going to come, and the Gen Alpha, which is going to follow immediately after, the way they are looking at it is not just about my individual contribution, but how is my individual contribution tying to the overall global perspective, the overall sustainability, planet Earth, and whatnot. I think this generation is definitely more woke than the rest of us. But we come from different times, so let's keep it at that. But yes, I think it's a very interesting conversation. I see there are certain hands raised in terms of and I'm sure there's just so many questions on people's mind. However, since we are running very short of time, I'm going to request the panelists to please accept the questions maybe on LinkedIn, or so I'll request the audience to please reach out to the panelists on LinkedIn. You can connect with any of the panelists on LinkedIn, and we'll be more than happy to answer your questions, to take this forward. I'm going to quickly conclude the session, but before I conclude, I just want to leave you with a story. And this is a very interesting story which happened to me. It's one of my personal experiences. I was not the leader in question, but I'm going to share the story that I heard from my mentor. So, a CEO once asked, why should we invest in DEI when we have more pressing business concerns? CEOs, right? Business, money. So the DEI leader or the HR leader in question here responded, because when you build a workplace where everyone belongs, everyone performs better. And that is just plain good business. That's just plain good sense. So here's my challenge to each one of you. I'm sure there are a lot of thoughts, insights that you'll be taking from this session. But what's one action that you will take from today's discussion? Maybe just call out bias in meetings. Maybe it's advocating sponsorship over mentorship, or maybe it's just asking your colleagues if they feel truly included. Sometimes, in our day-to-day work, we get so caught up that we don't even fit. We forget sometimes to feel, ask or empathize with this person who may not be feeling very included. There's an African proverb which says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Right. So thank you to our incredible panelists and everyone who joined in today. Let's keep driving the change together. Back to you, Faisal.
Yeah, thank you everyone, and thanks Pallavi, you rocked.
Absolutely.
Yeah, both of
Right
you
back
rock.
at you. Right back at you, ladies.
So thank you, Ms. Pallavi, for expertly guiding us to this insightful session on the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. Your perspective and intuitive insights helped us navigate the complexities and opportunities of fostering an inclusive and equitable work environment. Our sincere appreciation to Ms. Sonika and Ms. Gauri for generously sharing their valuable insights. It has been an absolute honor to have such distinguished speakers enrich this discussion, emphasizing the significance of embracing diverse voices and creating spaces where everyone feels valued and empowered. For those eager to visit today's insights, the session recording is available on our YouTube link shared in the chat window. A special thanks to our event partners, Gesh, NASCON CUI, Algro, TLE, WICCI, LinkedIn Local, Ahmedabad, and India for their invaluable support in making this event a success. With that, we conclude our today's webinar. Thank you for joining us. Stay healthy, stay positive, and see you next time. Take care. Thank you, Pallavi.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Okay, thank you, Kalpana. You can close the meeting.